Marilyn was my friend. Not just an acquaintance, but a friend, and I loved her. Larry was a friend too, and I loved him, but this is about Marilyn tonight. However, as I've been putting my thoughts together, it is impossible to talk about one without the other. Friendship is one of God's most precious gifts, and Bill and I have enjoyed 60 years of it with Larry and Marilyn. We became friends shortly after Marilyn came to Detroit Citadel and married Larry in the 1950s. When Bill and I were married a few years later, Larry was Bill's best man, and Marilyn was one of my bridesmaids. As the years went by and our kids all started to arrive, we spent a lot of time at each other's houses so the kids could play together. Neither of us had any money, so we always ate in. I much preferred it on the times that we were at Marilyn's house, because she was a much better cook than I was, and everyone was then very happy. She actually... You made me lose my place. Where was I? Yes, Marilyn actually was a great cook. And through the years, she shared her talents and even shared all the wonderful concoctions that she came up with. When Larry and Marilyn bought a pop-up camper a few years later, we were often invited to join them on holiday weekends. This came to a screeching halt when one cold, in my opinion, night, after listening to me whine about being cold, Larry got an electric heater, set it up in the camper, blowing lovely hot air towards our bed, while a big fan right next to it cooled Larry and Marilyn off at the other end. This was fine until the middle of the night when, first the fuse blew and then the power went out. We were never invited again to camp. Life is a journey, and it was a sad day for us when they retired and moved to Florida. However, a few years later, we retired and spent a couple of months in Florida each year and enjoyed fellowship again on the beaches and in our favorite restaurants, which we could now afford. Like some of us, Marilyn could be a little difficult at times, but inside, she had a tender and gracious nature. One of the things I liked was that you always knew where you stood with her and what she thought because she told you. She was strong in spirit, but as the years went by, she suffered pain, and more pain, as we all know. Through all she suffered, her spirit was still there, and I loved to watch her with her grandchildren. She was a true grandmother and loved her family. Marilyn was my friend, and I will miss her. My heart is sad today, but my soul rejoices because she has no more pain, and I know that she and Larry are with the Lord.
This is the fullness of the gospel of Jesus Christ. That when we couldn't save ourselves as hard as we try, somebody prayed for me. Before we even understood the grace of Jesus Christ in his prevenient grace, somebody prayed for me that I would know and be saved. And we get to the point as we are saved where we say, and now, hallelujah, the rest of my days. The good days, the bad days, the tragic days, the numb days, the sad days, all of my days will gladly be spent in promoting his praise. We celebrate the life tonight of two people who prayed for us. And they spent their life promoting his praise gladly, and that didn't stop on Wednesday. Their testimony promotes his praise this evening. Their legacy promotes his praise daily through those they leave behind. So we're going to sing this song, and when we get to those words, and now hallelujah, the rest of my days, I want you to know that testimony, that someone prayed for you, and you can know that salvation, you can know that grace, and live it out gladly each and every day. Now stand up, and we're going to have an introduction, and we're going to sing this, and the band's going to lead us.
Wrong one. I don't know how I could follow that. We kind of talked amongst ourselves. Chuck says, "No, I'm not going to say nothing." Doug says, "No, I'm not going to say." Linda's, "No, I'm not saying nothing." Well, I didn't want to say nothing either. But here I am. Just want to say thank you to all of you for coming. And those who couldn't be here but are watching, I know it was a holiday weekend and travel, and death is not convenient. But we're here celebrating the life of my mom and my dad, who we all love very, very much. They left this earth the same way they went through life, together. As tragic as this loss has been, I can guarantee you that neither one of them would have wanted to go on without the other one. I know we're going to see him again someday. I have the faith that they instilled in me throughout my childhood and all of our childhoods. I know where they are. And I know they're no longer in pain. They're no longer suffering. I know I just talked to Dad the other day, and he says, "Man," he says, "I can't believe I got to take this walker everywhere." Well, Mom's been in her little speeder cart for several years, so it still doesn't take away the pain of their sudden departure from this earthly home. I wrote some things down. I really have no idea what to say, so I might ramble a little bit, but I can see the clock, so I'll watch that. Because I know how Salvation Army meetings can go sometimes. As a family, me and Doug and Chuck and Linda, and I apologize to Doug. He was born in 1962, not 1961. I sent the back of the program for everyone to proof. So there you have it. But growing up with Mom and Dad, we started out in Detroit in a tiny little house on Granville. We moved in 1968 to, I wouldn't call it a better house, but it had an acre of land, and that's where most of our memories were made as a family. At that ramshackle little house, we ate dinner every night, pretty much every night as a family. And Mom was a good cook. And I got to tell you, me and Chuck, and Doug, and Linda, we all got that from her. The other thing we all got is we always make way too much food, because you never know who might stop by, and you never want to run out. That's just who they were, and they've raised us, and that's who we are. Everyone is always welcome at our homes. We did a lot of family vacations. You heard Val talk about camping. I was camping. My mom often showed me a picture. She says, "See that picture? They were at the campground. I was pregnant with you when we took that picture." So camping was a big part of their lives. We used to go on the church would have campouts. We go up to Jackson and go camping. I was just talking to Dad the other day. I said, "Gosh, I said, I remember when man walked on the moon, we were camping. I said, was that with the church group? Or when was that? Because I'm old and my brain is going. Dad could remember everything. Aunt Barb will tell you, not often correctly. But Dad seemed to know details about everything. He says, no, we were at Sugarloaf Campground, and your mother had just gotten a job as a cook at, I think it was Oakwood Hospital or one of the hospitals. And I told her, but we're going camping this weekend. Why did you go get a job? He says, well, I don't care. I'm taking the kids and we're going camping. You can go to work. Well, I don't even think it was the first night. Mom showed up. She quit her job. Not going camping without her. They spent their honeymoon in Gatlinburg, Tennessee. They were married in June of 1957. They drove down and spent their honeymoon night, believe it or not, because it was so far away, just around the corner from our house in Taylor. Well, back then, Taylor was in the middle of nowhere. But they spent their honeymoon night there, and then they spent their honeymoon in Gatlinburg, and that began a lifelong love of Gatlinburg and the Pigeon Forge area and the Smoky Mountains, and Dad loved bluegrass. I'm surprised I haven't heard any bluegrass yet. Maybe we'll hear some later, I don't know. We all went camping in a big old blue Sears cabin tent. Big old canvas, smelly tent. Each of us kids, when we went camping, had a beer box. I think it was Stroh's. They had the little cardboard flap lids. We were all in charge of packing our own things when we went camping. If it wasn't in your box and we got to the campground, oh well. So certain things probably got left behind on purpose. We used to go, it seems like frequently, we'd get up Sunday morning and Dad would say, you know what, let's go to the falls. And we'd pack up in the car or the van, and we would drive to Niagara Falls for the day and spend the day at Niagara Falls, stopping at the corn cribs along the way there and the way back. Family was everything to them. They loved their grandkids more than you can even imagine. And when Chuck got married and started popping babies out, I thought, phew, the burden of grandchildren has been lifted, because obviously my husband and I don't have kids. And I thought, oh, thank goodness Chuck is finally married and having babies. They loved those grandkids, and then my brother, and then my sister, and now all their kids are having kids. It's like rabbits. I don't know. Dad had a lot of jokes. Any of you that have spent any time ever with my family at a family function, or even down in the band room, after church, at the campground, Dad had a joke for every occasion. He was constantly the light of the party with that big grin, and Mom always sitting there just shaking her head, because she knew every time Dad started what was coming. Pizza was a treat at our house about once a week. Back in the day, you used to need a coupon to get a second pizza free from Little Caesars. And there was one on the corner where we lived in Taylor. So every week we get the new TV guide, and we go through the TV guide and pull out that buy one, get one free Little Caesars pizza, and we'd have pizza once a week. They were on the church bowling league. That was fun for us kids when they would take us, because we got to go to the bowling alley and have dinner at the bowling alley and run around. I think there were some Dobneys probably involved in that too. Running around the bowling alley while they're all trying to bowl and be serious. And Thanksgiving, we always went down to the Thanksgiving Day parade. We always had dinner at Grandma McDougall's. That was a hectic day because you got up early to do the parade, then we had to rush to Grandma's to do dinner, then we had to rush back to the Corps to do the Thanksgiving concert. Was traditionally in Detroit, was always on Thanksgiving Day. And Christmas was even worse. We did Christmas Eve at Grandma McDougall's, and then we did Christmas Day at Grandma Parker's. Well, they lived in Port Huron. So we'd get all our stuff from Grandma McDougall's on Christmas Eve. We were exhausted, supposedly, by the time we got home. We'd get up, go to sleep. I think Doug was usually the first one awake, and everyone would say, go back to bed, because Mom and Dad, I think, had just barely laid down. And we'd get up, we'd rush through, we'd open things up and say, come on, let's go, we got to go to Grandma Parker's. And then we'd spend the whole day at Grandma Parker's, and we wouldn't get back till late. So the day after Christmas was a fun day, because then we could actually see what we actually got for Christmas. I think the biggest memory that all of us have of Mom and Dad is their great faith in Jesus Christ. And because of that, all of us, regardless of the different paths our life has taken, we all have a firm foundation in Jesus Christ. And because of that, we have hope. We have hope, and we know that we're going to see him again someday soon. Thank you.
That I had to speak first so she could calm down. I'm up here looking like I got Parkinson's, so. You know, we've been thinking a lot the past couple days of, you know, what we can say about Grandma and Grandpa's lives, and there's so many memories. It would be impossible to try and, you know, fit them all into something today, you know, but as an adult, thinking of what it means to have been raised in the McDougall family, we talk about a life of faithful service, of family, and love ultimately at the center of everything. And it's funny because, you know, when we were kids, I was just telling Melanie, the only thing we really thought it meant to be a McDougall is you got to be popular at band camp, which is kind of an oxymoron, but yeah. That is when we still outnumbered Dobneys. I don't know where we're at today, but it was really hard to try and put into words and talk about some of the memories. But one thing that I did a lot growing up was writing poetry to try and express emotions. I probably haven't written anything in over a decade, but I felt like it would be easier to speak about Grandma and Grandpa in this way, so I'm just going to read something that I wrote for you. For every grain of sand I've walked on at the beach, you left behind a memory I'll always get to keep. For every birthday wish and smile that we shared, you let me know just one more time just how much you cared. For every hug and kiss from you, there is meaning beyond measure. The love you've always given me is now my greatest treasure. For the time you spent and lessons taught, I'll always be so thankful. But your example of faith and how to live is what makes me the most grateful. For every time you cried out to say a prayer for me, I felt your presence, no longer alone, and your embrace kept me going. For every judgment that others dealt, you showed me they were wrong. You told me that it too would pass. Said to get back up and show them that I'm strong. For all that life has taken and every struggle that it dealt, you showed me grace and understood my broken heart and the pain that I had felt. For all the trials that you both had faced, the good times far outshine the bad. You lived gracefully and truly loved, set the perfect example for all of us to make the best with what we had. I thank you both, with all that I have, for creating so many beautiful lives. I'll cling to our family, as you always have, until we meet again in your beautiful new home with Jesus in the sky.
Hello. Okay. I always knew that one day I'd be standing up here talking about one of my grandparents. The thing is, I thought that I could walk down there and give the other one a bear hug when I was done. I never imagined this. As someone who has been blessed to call them Grandma and Grandpa, I can tell you that it sort of makes sense in a way. Grandma and Grandpa, Larry and Marilyn, Gigi and Papa Larry. Just like how a hard-boiled egg and pork sausage are good enough on their own, if you mix the two together into a sort of strange-looking Scottish ball thing, man, I'm telling ya, there is nothing better. It is only right that they never be apart. Sitting down to write this, thoughts flooded my mind, and yet no words seemed to do them justice. I thought that I could talk about all of the adventure and laughter that they brought into my life. the cross-country road trip to Maine, where me and Lindsay watched Out to Sea hundreds of times, but Grandpa knew the whole thing by heart and never got to see it. The walks to the park behind their house in Taylor, and their cool upstairs room that seemed like one big treasure trove. I thought maybe I could talk about the workshop and the soft sawdust Grandpa would let us hold, and how the smell of it to this day brings me comfort. I could talk about how they were the ones to take me to the ocean for the first time, or on my first roller coaster ride. How Grandma put Lindsay's hair into a super high ponytail in order for her to be able to ride all the same rides as me at Cedar Point. I could talk about the long car rides to see all of their favorite places in Florida, each and every time we visited, or the number of golf cart rides through Stonehenge. So many that I could probably tell you right now a story or two about every resident if you showed me a map. I wanted to talk about the late nights watching Family Feud on their porch, and how Steve Harvey made them laugh, and how the most inappropriate answers always made them teary-eyed from laughter. It was so cool to get to know them as an adult, to see them not only as my grandparents, but as my dearest friends. I could talk about the trips to the flea market where Grandma would show me where she got her newest pair of bedazzled sunglasses. I could have talked about how they followed the divisional band all around Florida just so that we could see them every day we were down there. How Grandma wouldn't let Grandpa sit down when we were visiting until we each had a can of pop, a bag of chips, or a hot dog, and that she would make him cook right then and there, whether we said yes to the hot dog or not. How she yelled at me every time I tried to pick up their house before we left, since the kids had inevitably destroyed it. She was adamant that it was okay to leave it. They would take care of it. I always tried to sneak and clean up anyway, because I was trying to save Grandpa the trouble later, when I knew she would tell him to go take care of it. I wanted to talk about how you could always count on Grandpa to have his camera in his hand, making sure not to miss a single thing. Or how you could be in the middle of watching a show, and he would just stand up, plug in the camera, and off we'd go down memory lane. Those were my favorite times. It never failed that Grandpa would be telling a story about all those guys you talked about earlier, I'm sure, and something that happened 50 or 60 years ago, and Grandma would chime in with what she said had actually happened. They would be minor details that he would mess up, like what they were eating at the time that the story took place or something. And off they went, discussing who was right, leaving you hanging for the actual end of the story. Sitting down to write this, I thought, I could talk about how life revolved around food when we were all together. How Grandma always served us olives. Probably because she felt guilty over yelling at us when we were kids for eating them all before the grown-ups could get to them. I could tell you how, whenever we were with them in Florida, it would be a restaurant for breakfast and a big display of sandwich fixings and chips 2 hours later for lunch, a trip to the orange grove for orange ice cream in the afternoon, and then a full roast with all of the fixings an hour after we got home for dinner. We'd finish dinner with just enough time to head down to Hella's for a cannoli for dessert. Of course, I wanted to talk about how, whenever Grandma would say yes to the question, "Do you want some coffee?" it would strike fear into the heart of whoever was given the task to make it. I thought about the time I brought them cannoli punchkis, bringing them one to share because I was trying to follow the medical advice of their doctors, I think. Grandpa showed me the box of 6 that he had just gone and got from the loony baker. You know, those doctors, they don't know what they are talking about. I thought for sure that I would talk about Christmas Eve. But then I thought, first of all, I would like to get through this in one piece. And second, if you were blessed to be a part of that night, then you already know all about the ageism that took place when getting in line for food, or the reading of The Night Before Christmas by Grandpa, Cajun style, or more recently, their love for the saran wrap game and the fire that came out of Grandma whenever it was her turn. How Grandpa would always proudly display his Christmas socks from the year before. I thought for a while about talking about how they never failed to surprise me, whether it was Grandma drinking an alcoholic drink right in front of me at Andy and Joe's wedding, or Grandpa pulling out my dad's old letters from the Air Force that I'm sure he never wanted me to read. There was that time that they rang our doorbell, 6:30 on a Christmas morning. I did not realize the night before that they were serious when I had jokingly invited them to come do Santa with us. That was a new tradition that I'm really going to miss. Of course, there was the day that Grandma handed me her cell phone and said, "Mel, can you figure out how to open this message and read it to me?" The message was from a woman named Catherine Ann Boyle. I think that they got a kick out of the shock factor sometimes. Or maybe they were just meant to teach me to always expect the unexpected. God knew that, because here we are today in total shock, just when we thought there couldn't possibly be any more surprises out of them. After thinking about what I wanted to say tonight, I decided not to talk about any of that stuff. Grandma always told me she didn't want people to stand here talking about her and making a big deal out of things. And I wanted so badly to honor her wishes. It's just, I'm my grandfather's granddaughter, so I couldn't help but ignore her and tell the stories anyways. When I sat down to write this tribute, I had my favorite movie on in the background, and it was a movie that I had spent a lot of time recently trying to convince them and everyone else in the family to watch with me. And all of a sudden, I knew what I needed to talk about. Legacy. What is a legacy? It's planting seeds in a garden you never get to see. Grandma and Grandpa, they spent their life planting seeds for their family. They lived each day as faithful followers of Jesus Christ, and what they left us was so much more than any earthly thing. We have inherited 1,000,000 memories, 1,000,000 stories, 1,000,000 band CDs, and 1,000,000 stuffed animals, and also a big crazy family tied together by a love that will stay with us forever. They really did their earthly jobs as our grandparents very well. Grandma's greatest joy came from her family, especially her grandchildren, until we were replaced by the great-grandchildren. Her deepest sadness that she told us often was knowing that she couldn't stay here with us forever. She so badly wanted to be here for all of you younger ones as you reached each milestone in life. She was so proud of every one of you. We would be at their house, and my eyes would glaze over as she told me about every single one of you's whatever you were doing lately. She lived each day making sure every person in her family and in her life knew that they mattered to her. If you were friends with her on Facebook, I am sure at some point you were a recipient of a sticker comment. I was always amazed at how strong her sticker game was, and you could always count on there being one or two. Sometimes they'd be insulting, sometimes they would be funny, sometimes they would just be silly, but I'm really going to miss that. Grandpa's greatest joy came from the Salvation Army Brass Band. Not necessarily because of the music, although we know he loved a good band CD and a good band concert and all of that, but because of what the Army and the band had done for his family. The only time I personally saw him get upset with us was recently. Me and my sisters, and we were being brats about the band. He put his foot down, and he loudly made sure that we understood if it weren't for the Salvation Army and the way that the Lord works through the band, not a single one of us would be standing here today. I know that his devotion to and his love for the band stemmed from his devotion to and his deep love for his family. While his greatest earthly sadness could quite possibly have been having to leave Florida in the Soroa band with all of his buddies, I know that his and Grandma's deepest sadness would be for their family to not know the sweet love of Jesus. A song popped into my head the other day, and I feel like if we were to ask Grandma and Grandpa, what do you want? Their answer would be something like this. I want to leave a legacy. How will they remember me? Did I choose to love? Did I point to you enough? To make a mark on things, I want to leave an offering. A child of mercy and grace who blessed your name unapologetically and leave that kind of legacy. So, to my cousins, my sisters, please make sure that you know and love Jesus. Have a personal relationship with him. In everything you do, strive to follow him. One of the last things Grandpa ever told me was, you have to follow where the Lord leads you. If you do this, not only will you experience the greatest love of all, but someday we can all sit up in heaven together, playing the saran wrap game, listening to Grandpa tell a story we've heard 100 times, watching all of the home videos he recorded while Grandma feeds us well and squeezes our hand as we walk past. I can't wait to see them again, healthy, healed, and whole, together with all of the people from their lives that I have heard so much about but never got the chance to know. So, Grandma and Grandpa, your stories will not be forgotten. The love you showed us will be talked about to my children's children. Stories of your selflessness, your faithfulness, your stubbornness, and your smiles will be passed down to the generations to come. Charlie and Darcy asked me to tell you, we will really miss you. Nothing will be the same without you. We wish you didn't have to die. We wish we had a jetpack so we could see you now and give you a hug and get some candy. But we can't wait to see you again in heaven, where you are now dancing with Jesus with no canes or walkers. I have no doubt that when Grandpa got to heaven's gates, just as he was about to meet Jesus face to face, he heard the all-familiar call, "Larry, would you slow down?" And he shook his head in disbelief as he turned and he saw his beautiful bride running towards him so that they could meet Jesus together and be told without a doubt, "Well done, my good and faithful servants. Well done."
That was really beautiful. A couple weeks ago, I was at home, and I was actually about to leave the next day, and my mom told me I needed to stay home longer so that I could go to my brother's track meet with him. And my dad told me I should go get breakfast with Grandpa next day. And I said, yeah, you guys are right. So I took the phone number from my dad, and I called Grandpa a couple times, and he didn't pick up. So I said, well, next time I'll talk to him. Oh, there's not a next time. I went home to Grand Rapids, and I got out of work, and I just wanted to whistle for some reason, and I was like, this is just like Grandpa. He's always whistling. He's just sitting outside in a lawn chair whistling away. And I was just whistling. I was like, oh, man, I didn't get to eat breakfast with him, and I don't know why, but all of this just feels like it was planned out. It all feels like it was planned out in my head. So I have a letter that I was going to read. My aunt found it in a briefcase that Grandpa had with some other important things. I'm not sure this was very important, but it's in a plastic sleeve, and it's from 10 years ago. My mom emailed this to my grandma on June 7th, and it was printed off on July 19th, so it doesn't look like they check their email too often, but it says, "Hi, Marilyn. We hope you're recovering from your surgery. Sorry we have not sent a get well or Mother's Day gift. I am behind on most everything. I wanted to send this report Charles wrote in school. Thought you would like it. It starts like this." And I didn't remember writing this at all until I read it. And I looked at the pamphlet today, and it said they moved away in 2003, so my memory was really good because I was only 3 when this memory popped into my head. But it goes like this. Grandma and Grandpa's house. I can still remember that old house in Taylor, the house my grandma and grandpa used to live in before they moved to Florida. I remember sitting in their living room with those lights, making the room dull but friendly. I had forgotten my cars, and I was sad we were going to be there the rest of the day. So I asked my grandma and grandpa if they had any cars. And my grandma said to me, well, I have some of your dad's when he was a kid. She gave me 2 of them to me. I admired them, even though they had old chip paint and they were rusty from the times my dad had gotten them wet and dirty. I loved them. They were so different, and they were heavier and didn't move very fast, but it made me think of how my dad played and enjoyed with them when he was a kid. They were probably some of his only toys when he was a kid. He always told me how hard his life was growing up, so. He had really cool cars. I think I was afraid he was going to read this. They weren't that cool. I didn't think they were that cool, but they did have some meaning to me. And continuing, I am pretty sure I could sell them easy, but I wouldn't. I don't know why, but I think these were his favorite too. Those cars made me remember people can't be in your life as much as you want them to. Sadly, that's part of life, and sometimes I wish Grandma and Grandpa were here, but that's life. So that was me missing them while they were in Florida. And they were there until, well, my mom told me she thinks this was something they held on to, and it was part of the reason they moved back, because they missed us so much. But they didn't move back here until 2017, and then I moved away. So I stand here today with a little bit of regret.